My name is Emma Westerhof, and I'm a current rising second-year student at the University of Virginia, and I'm working as the project intern this summer for BTtoP.
And I'm Knefelkamp. I'm a senior scholar with the American Association of Colleges and Universities and a senior scholar with the Bringing Theory to Practice project, and was part of the design team for the conference. So I'm wondering, why did you volunteer for this project? I mean, you've been working yourself to death down there.
Not true.
But why did you volunteer for this?
Other than being really drawn to the kind of culture that BTtoP has created in the workplace and in just kind of in the organization of the conference in general. I've worked a couple that have been more circuses, and this has just been so amazingly smooth and enriching. I was really drawn to the fact that it was focusing on intersectionality, and in my own first year experience at UVA this past year, I found myself kind of subconsciously pulled in that direction too, and so it just seemed like a very, very cool way to kind of put a cherry on top of a year in which issues of multiculturality and just kind of other things like that I feel like I'd like to study. This was a really cool way to culminate in that way. So I think that the message and the kind of the types of people that it's bringing together really appealed to me.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, because when we first started, Jennifer came up with the idea, and we were in a staff meeting. You may not have heard this story, but Jennifer and Becky were talking about intersectionality. Jen thought, well, it would be good if we did a conference. The largest gathering that Bringing Theory to Practice has ever had has been about 40 or 50 people. And in the last couple of years, it's been more like 24 people in kind of small think tanks.
Right.
And we decided, well, let's put on a show. Right? And we thought we'd get 40, 50, 60 people. And now here we are at 350.
Max capacity.
Max capacity. Yeah. And I think you echo what we were hoping, which is really nice to hear, actually. We thought it was a timely topic. We thought it was particularly a timely topic
For sure.
in this country right now, right? Because of the countervailing sort of social forces and some of the dichotomous ways groups are dealing with each other. So the dream was to bring together people from different disciplines, to have cross-disciplinary talk. So it wasn't just the psychologists talking with the psychologists, and right, we really wanted the cross-disciplinary notion, and we really, really wanted a cross-generational notion, and Jen worked really hard, and Caitlin worked really hard to do that. So I'm really delighted, actually, when you look out at the audience and you see how diverse it is. You take a look at the program and you see how diverse it is. But the goal really was to model the intersection, right? That there's intersectionality in people who have multiple identities, some of which come to the fore in one situation and others in another. But you have intersectionality across the disciplines, you have it across the generations, and in a very happy way, we have it across the roles. We have student affairs people, faculty, chief diversity officers, lots of students. So we're kind of living the dream here.
Putting into practice.
It's just it's been an exciting time. Now, you've been working the desk and doing all sorts of other things, but are there particular sessions that you were able to see or that stand out?
So I was able to sit in on Hannah Albright from Tulane University's, I believe it was called Emerging Communities.
Right.
And the topic appealed to me immensely, kind of based on what I'm hoping to either see realized on my own university campus, or just kind of, I think it's a personal interest, and I'm really I'm happy when I can find those connections and like-minded people at my university who are also concerned with similar issues. But something that Hannah, she talked about a lot, she talked about an interesting module or center that Tulane has created to make sure that the volunteers that are going into the community there aren't kind of bringing a savior complex or aren't out of touch with the people that they're helping. And I see that manifested a lot, unfortunately, either through Greek life or various organizations that college students can be a part of, whether it's even just like for credit, doing kind of community service for a class, and kind of how to make it an authentic experience, an authentic desire for the students too, that it's not just something that you're either putting on a resume or kind of doing when you're with people. I mean, like the example that Hannah gave was that people in the community there would complain that students would show up hungover, or just that they would have absolutely no experience or understanding of what was actually going on, what the real issues were in those communities.
And they'd be exuding privilege.
Exactly,
right?
And so it's this entitlement thing, and a woman in the audience pointed out that the people that you are assisting, or really it's more about kind of providing yourself as a resource, and being open to what's necessary, looking at the missions within the actual organizations that are in place in the communities pre-existing. It would just miss the entire point of the project itself, and again, probably do more for the volunteers than it was actually doing for the community. And so whether it's been through service trips personally or some interesting volunteer experiences, that's something that's really stood out to me as a problem. And I was really happy to see, number one, another student who's in this role presenting to people at a conference and being listened to, which was really wonderful, who echoed my concerns, and also it was just very affirming in general to be at a table, a round table, with faculty and professors and people who have been working with students who are actually now talking to a student and talking to other students at the table.
Listening.
Right, and I thought that was really invaluable and quite unique, to be honest. I haven't had that kind of experience at a conference before, and I've been happy to have specific mentors or professors or advisors at my university who have really tried to kind of create that sort of culture too. But it's usually the gems of the professors or the gems of the advisors.
That's a great phrase.
So it was really wonderful to see a sort of, I think that's part of what kind of culture has been created at this conference, and an expectation that sort of dialogue is what's going to happen. And I think that is really grounding it, and as you put it, living the dream.
Yeah, and I know it just makes me happy to hear it, because we really wanted the conference to model what we wanted people to be able to get a deep flavor of, when they went back to their campuses. And I'm really pleased that you went to the session you did. That there's a lot of research that shows that if service learning or working in the community-based learning, whatever you call it, if it's not done well, the way the Tulane people are clearly doing it, that it cements the stereotypes.
Oh, exactly. That was something that
it cements the stereotypes that the students have of the other, and it cements the community stereotypes of, privileged college students. But again, across race, across gender, it's the notion of sort of privilege, not privilege, right? Although frequently it has to do with race and ethnicity and gender and things like that. The St. Catherine University is very much involved in this kind of thing, and they actually bring the community leaders onto campus, and they're called community scholars. Oh, wow. And they do co-teaching.
Oh, very cool.
So they're really crossing the rules and getting into the dialogue, and it's made a huge difference on the campus. Well, I'm really pleased to hear your experience at the conference. I've been a senior scholar with AAC&U, and then for over 20 years, and this is the conference with the most participation that we have ever had. It is more typical for a higher ed conference to have a student panel. One.
Right. Like squeezed in between
squeeze it in.
Yeah.
And usually the student panel are the only students at the conference.
Right.
And they come and go. And this is that continued dialogue. So I'm just pleased that you're having that experience, and I'm having that experience as a retired faculty member, listening to the people. It's been a very interesting. I retired 3 years ago, so it's been an interesting peek back into the academic world, and to be around this many students is good for us oldies. Us gray-haired ladies.
It's mutually beneficial. I think one of the things that may deter, I think why conferences in general might not extend the same sort of platform for students. Maybe because there's this preoccupation with getting to the answer, and I'm not saying that students have this like perfect solution, but I think that part of what conferences should do is bring people together for this conversation and dialogue, and I think that that's even something that people get intellectually but fail to implement. And so I really think it's so fabulous that you haven't kind of relegated people to a side room, or even like just the symbolic value of having student-only sessions. And I think that that's really fabulous, and also the fact that from my experience and from what I've been observing behind the reg desk or personally, students are actually going to those sessions, and that's not always a guarantee too. So
that's true.
It's wonderful.
True. Well, and the I guess the last thing I would say, and you and I were both at the opening session, and that was designed as a dialogue, right? It wasn't the typical keynote. It really was those two amazing individuals, Laura Rendon and Liba Chung, speaking in that kind of dialogue way and really listening to each other. You could tell they were listening as opposed to waiting to talk. Right.
That's so often.
But then I'm really interested, and we have to sneak some time even though the conference will be over, the closing thing, that's designed the same way. There are 4 people here that are our guests that have the assignment of experiencing the conference. They themselves represent lots of intersectionalities. They represent different disciplines. They represent different generations. And they have very different roles in higher education. And they have been roaming the whole conference. And so the closing session is called Voices from the Intersection. And Becky's going to moderate it, but there are these 4 very distinct, complex voices that will have experienced the conference as opposed to a closing benediction.
Right.
So we'll have to talk after and see how it went.
That'd be great. I'm excited.
Okay.